everyone, my name is Claire McAlpine. I'm Joint Head of the Social Change Hub at Mediacom, and I'm here with Pauline Robson, who is Head of our Real World Insight team. So this is part of Mediacom's What Next video series, and we're putting different topics under the microscope to consider its position before, during and after the pandemic, and importantly, what this means for brands and communications. So since March 2020, the world has rapidly changed around us. We see people in the UK pivoting their behaviours, shifting their attitudes and switching their intentions. And it's really essential that we continue to stay on top of these changes. But we're really starting to see a big change now. So in June 2020, the government is starting to ease lockdown restrictions and the country tentatively emerges and tries to return to some sort of normal. So in this update, we're going to explore what it means for keeping healthy and safe during the pandemic. So I'm going to hand over to Pauline now to talk through 3 of the 6 key trends that we've spotted around staying healthy during the pandemic.
So as Claire mentioned, we'll be covering 6 themes that we've identified within the topic of keeping healthy. Now, as we started to analyse the behaviours that were emerging, we saw trends and counter trends. So we'll be examining these as we go through. I'll be talking you through the first 3 trends. So eating will be the first one we explore. Food's become a national obsession during lockdown. We'll explore the trend of managing health and immunity through healthy eating and vitamins, as well as the desire to seek solace and comfort through indulgence in familiar favourites and fast food treats. When it comes to drinking, we've seen alcohol sales rising, social drinking occasions moving in home and new drinking cultures emerging. But people have also been using lockdown as an opportunity to cut down on drinking and get healthy. And in terms of exercise, whilst we've seen the rise of in-home workouts and people around the country doing PE with Joe Wicks each morning, there's also a sizable proportion of people who've been less active during lockdown. And lockdown tiredness and Zoom fatigue have emerged as a phenomenon as our new routines and behaviours take their toll. Then Claire's going to talk to you about the final 3 trends. The stress and insecurity of coronavirus and of lockdown is having a huge impact on the nation's mental health. And we're seeing people taking active steps to manage this through exercise, meditation and mindfulness. As we start to emerge from lockdown, new behaviours are starting to appear around clothing. Whilst Britain remains the least likely nation in Europe to wear a face mask, they are becoming a more common sight when we're out and about, and they could even become the next fashion accessory and means of self-expression. And when it comes to physical contact and physical distancing, well, we've seen over the weekend that for many people, the feeling is that lockdown is over and they're rushing back out to socialise with friends and family and enjoy the sunshine. However, there's a significant proportion of people who are reticent to return to crowded places. Ensuring that they feel safe and reassured will be critical as businesses reopen. So on to the first trend around eating. We've seen that as Britain went into lockdown, food became a national obsession, from supermarket shortages to social media's sourdough obsession to lockdown weight gain. In a YouGov poll, 40% of people said that they were eating more since lockdown began, and 25% said they were eating less healthily. In another poll, nearly half of all people in the UK said they'd gained weight during lockdown. Now, food can be a great solace in difficult times. People turn to it for comfort or to stave off boredom. We've seen a rise in sales of snack foods as out-of-home eating occasions move into the home and people seek comfort in moments of indulgence. And in lockdown, food became a hobby. People turned to baking as a way to pass the time or to entertain their children. Respondents from our Real World Britain qualitative panel told us about how they were cooking more elaborate meals for their family and really using food as a way to bring the family together. In many cases, they were using it as a way to take control over an aspect of their lives when everything else was so uncertain, and as a way to show care and love for their families. And this seeking indulgence became really clear a couple of weeks ago in late May, as many food restaurants began to reopen some of their sites for collection and for delivery. People were keen to indulge some of their familiar favourites after 2 months in lockdown, and we saw huge crowds and huge queues appearing. When McDonald's reopened 33 of their drive-through stores with new safety measures in place, we saw huge queues. Police were called to McDonald's branch in Peterborough to assist with traffic flow in the area, so popular was the reopening. But lockdown food isn't just about comfort and indulgence. there has understandably been a sharp rise in interest in how to boost our immune systems and stay healthy. Interest in vitamins has surged since the start of the pandemic, with search spikes for vitamins in the UK 30% higher at the start of the pandemic than in the traditional seasonal peak in January and February, when people are on their New Year health kicks. Google data shows how interest in vitamin C rose as people looked to boost their immune systems. And this was then overtaken by interest in vitamin D as the lockdown was imposed and people's time outdoors was limited. And an emerging trend here is the growing interest in foods with functional benefits as people seek to naturally boost their immunity. Search terms from Quantcast reveal some of the immunity benefits that people are searching for, including food sources of vitamin D, turmeric, and anti-inflammatory foods. Now, as people emerge from lockdown, there's likely to be a growing demand for food products that can address immunity as a functional benefit. And this presents an interesting opportunity for foods and drinks brands. On to drinking. So, as the pubs closed and drinking occasions moved in home, drinking culture rapidly adapted, with quarantinis, bottomless Zoom brunches, and the now ubiquitous virtual pub quiz coming to the fore. Alcohol has been as much a social lubricant for virtual gatherings as it has been for nights out in the pub. According to research by Ipsos and King's College London, 19% of people say they've drunk more alcohol than normal during lockdown. And we've seen an increase in off-licence alcohol sales of over 30%. There's even a new word in Japanese to describe this new drinking behaviour. The word onnomi means drinking alone online while self-isolating. But this isn't just about people having a couple of beers while socialising on Zoom. Problem drinking has increased as people are increasingly isolated and anxious as a result of coronavirus and of lockdown. Alcohol charity Alcohol Change UK has seen the number of people seeking help for problem drinking soaring, increasing nearly fivefold versus the same period last year. And other behaviours that are detrimental to health are also increasing. Kantar's COVID-19 Global Barometer found that more than a third of smokers have been smoking more than usual in lockdown. But as a counter-trend to rising alcohol sales and increased drinking behaviours, we're also seeing a large number of people actually reducing their alcohol consumption. A study of 2,000 drinkers by Alcohol Change UK found that since the start of lockdown, 35% of people have cut down the amount of alcohol they drink, and 6% have given up alcohol altogether as people seek to adopt healthier behaviours in the pandemic. Alongside this, search data from Captify has shown an 8-fold increase in people searching for non-alcoholic drinks. With pubs not due to open until at least July and social distancing measures set to continue long into the future, the in-home socialising trend looks set to continue for some time yet. There's an interesting opportunity here for non-alcoholic drinks brands to target that in-home drinking occasion for people who are not drinking alcohol. What does the non-alcoholic quarantini look like? And how can drinks brands become the non-alcoholic accompaniment to the virtual pub quiz? Finally, I'm going to look at exercise. So as lockdown started, it seemed that Britain couldn't get enough of the in-home workout. The closure of gyms and limiting of outdoor exercise meant that much physical activity moved into the home. According to YouGov, 74% of people have taken up some form of exercise since lockdown began, with 55% of people making use of their government-sanctioned daily walk to stay active. But it's important to recognise, as with so much during this pandemic, that this trend isn't playing out in the same way for everyone. In fact, it's very much amplifying existing health trends, with younger audiences much more likely to view workout videos online. 43% of Gen Z versus 8% of baby boomers are doing this, according to Global Web Index, and Gen Z were the generation more likely to view this kind of content before the pandemic started. And whilst many people have taken up physical activity in lockdown, a significant number have been less active. Research from Sport England found that 38% of people had actually done less exercise in the previous week than they'd been doing since lockdown started. And Sport England's latest campaign has encouraged everyone to get physically active during lockdown. Another recent campaign by Sport England highlights that physical activity is vitally important to everyone, including those who are less physically mobile. Their We Are Indefeatable campaign looks to inspire and support people with long-term health conditions to build more physical activity into their daily lives. Inclusivity is vital, and healthy living needs to be accessible to all, not just those who can afford fancy in-home gym equipment. Joe Wicks is a great example of this. As well as becoming the nation's PE teacher for school children and their parents, he's developed workout sessions specifically for seniors and people who are less able to move, including chair-based workouts, making exercising accessible and inclusive. As a brand, how are you helping all of your customers to be healthier? Many people have reported feeling unusually tired during lockdown. The Ipsos and King's College research found that 38% of people are sleeping less or less well than normal during lockdown. And many people seem to be experiencing lockdown brain fog, feeling more tired and groggy than usual. Now, there are a number of reasons why this could be happening. The first is disrupted routines. Lockdown has disrupted our routines, particularly for those people who are now having to work from home as well as care for and homeschool their children. And this disruption has been exhausting. We're also spending more time indoors with only limited exposure to daylight, and this is having an impact on our levels of alertness and can make us feel groggy and tired. For many people, having one eye on social media updates and continuously checking the news has led to a constant state of high alert, which is emotionally exhausting. And anxiety and poor mental health can affect the quality of our sleep, resulting in fatigue. Claire's going to explore more around the issue of mental health in a moment. And finally, our seemingly endless time spent on video calls could be having an impact on our tiredness and energy levels. Yes, Zoom fatigue is a thing. When we're communicating through a small square on a screen, many of the non-verbal cues that our brains use to quickly interpret meaning are absent, but our brains are still searching for those cues, and when they can't find them, our virtual interactions become very taxing. And this feeling is exacerbated by gallery view, those small multi-person screens where our brains are forced to decode so many people at once that no one comes through in any meaningful way. So if you find yourself exhausted after a day of working and socializing by video calls, it's because your brain has been working extra hard to process meaningful information, and you're not alone in feeling that way. I'm now going to hand over to Claire, who's going to talk through the last 3 trends.
And I think it's really fascinating that we're seeing such variations in people's behaviours. It just shows that we really can't assume that the pandemic is a great leveller or that behaviours and attitudes are homogenous across different groups of people. And I think this actually in particular plays out quite a lot over the next 3 trends that I'm going to talk through now. So the 4th trend that we've identified is mental health, and we're seeing counter trends around rising anxiety, particularly for some groups of people, and the active seeking of mindful moments. I think we also have to be very considerate when we're thinking about mental health at the moment, that it's not only the COVID-19 pandemic which is going to be impacting on people at this time. So across the US and the UK, and particularly in London, we're seeing protests with people expressing their outrage and sorrow at systemic racism and the deaths of unarmed Black people by police officers. So this really shows that there's more going on than just the pandemic at the moment, and we'll be keeping an eye on the data coming out around this and reflecting on it in future updates around mental health. So whilst happiness is returning, we are still some way from a return to normal levels of joy. So prior to the coronavirus crisis, happiness was consistently the most common emotion for Brits. On any given week, an average of 50% of people reported feeling happy since YouGov started tracking this topic in the summer of last year. But by March the 23rd this year, happiness had plummeted to 25%. Now, since that point, happiness has been slowly rising again. Over the last 5 weeks, happiness levels have risen back up to 38%. However, it's still yet to reclaim its spot as the top of the YouGov mood tracker. So 6 in 10 people are feeling less positive about the future than they were before the lockdown. Not only has happiness decreased, so too has optimism. Things that people claim would increase their optimism include finding a vaccine, income security, visiting friends and family, more clarity on lockdown release, and access to COVID-19 tests, and children returning to school. So I think this week in particular could have a really interesting impact on people's feelings on optimism. And I don't think it will be a simple impact because there's really quite a split feeling around lockdowns being lifted and children returning to school. So have you been accepting, suffering or resisting the lockdown? King's College London identified 3 main clusters within the population, which they've called the accepting, the suffering and the resisting. So the tendency to resist the current situation actually decreases gradually with age. So we can see 16 to 24s at one end of the spectrum, making up 46% of the resisting group. And then at the other end, we have the 55 to 75s making up just 3% of the resisting group. So there's a really big age difference across this set of attitudes and behaviours. Older people are by far most likely to be accepting of the lockdown. Those who are suffering are actually more evenly represented across the age distribution, but the biggest differences we're seeing is by gender, with women who are being significantly more likely to be suffering. In fact, women actually make up nearly 2/3 of the suffering cluster. And the reverse is true for resisting, with men representing almost 2/3 of this group. The pandemic is not the great leveller it's claimed to be. We're seeing big differences across socioeconomic grades, so people working in key worker roles, mortality rates across BAME audiences. So we really need to recognise that this pandemic is not impacting on people the same way, and this is going to have a big impact on people's health and well-being going forward, and it's something we really need to consider when we're thinking about our communications. We must be reflecting on this and what it means for our brands, and this is something we're really keen to support you with. So if you have any questions around this, do please get in contact, because we do understand that it is it's a topic that can feel difficult to navigate, but we've got a lot of support to help you in this area to understand it more deeply. So with women in lockdown, there's research emerging from the Fawcett Society that women are particularly being impacted by lockdown, reporting much higher levels of stress and mental health problems. This has often been found to be linked to increased responsibility for childcare, a higher impact from the economic elements of this, including furlough and taking reduced salaries. But I think we also have to look at the nature of the key worker roles, which are often filled by a lot of women, particularly when you're looking at care worker roles and hospital roles in nursing. So there is a gender difference, and it's really important to reflect that this isn't just going to be during lockdown. This will have implications going forward, particularly from an economic perspective. Where there are positives to be found in spending more time at home, this is being particularly felt for older age groups. So being in lockdown can have its ups and downs, and whilst the majority of Brits think spending more time at home has been a plus, actually 62% of people have been particularly enjoying spending time at home. An equal number of people have been saying lockdown has been positive and negative for their mental health. But if you start looking at the numbers, you can really see the age is starting to pull this apart. Because while 40% of people who are 65 plus believe it's been beneficial, nearly half of 18 to 24-year-olds say it's taken a toll. So people are seeking out mindful moments to support their mental health, and meditation has driven searches around mental well-being, along with yoga and cooking. And we can see people looking to apps such as Headspace and Calm, and these platforms are really helping to give people more information on mindfulness and well-being, helping to service, which is clearly a demand in what people are looking for at the moment. The fifth of the 6 trends that I want to talk to you about is clothing. So here we're seeing trends and counter trends around people choosing to use face masks and protective equipment and not use face masks. And indeed, there's been quite an interesting fashion twist to some of this, which from a branding perspective has some interesting implications. So the face mask has become the symbol of the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think any object really better symbolises the pandemic than the mask, and no object really better explains the world into which this pandemic arrived. So a sample of nearly 50,000 tweets from the beginning of March revealed that the top 5 emojis strongly associated with COVID-19 were the microbe, the face wearing a medical mask, the nauseated mask, the sneezing face in a bar of soap. So we're using emojis to communicate around the pandemic. In the UK, we are less likely to wear face masks than in Europe. So only 13% of people in the UK claim to wear face masks in public. Now, face mask wearing in Italy and Spain is much more commonplace post-release from quarantine, with 87% and 72% respectively of people wearing face masks in early May 2020. It's important to recognise, though, that public guidelines are quite different across countries. So during this data collection time, it was mandatory to wear face masks on public transport in Italy. Government advice could change Britain's attitudes to wearing face masks. So only 2 in 5 think that wearing a face mask is something they will do in the near future. But 3/4 of people say they would wear a face mask if the government advised it. And as I say, we can see the interest in face masks certainly rising through search behaviours, with searches on Google doubling in the last month for face masks. And we can see consumer brands, rather than just B2B brands, starting to move into the PPE space too, with Amazon soon selling its own branded face shield. And face masks are increasingly becoming a fashion statement. So masks are suddenly all around us. Our lockdown wardrobe started with tracksuits, then pivoted to video call power dressing, and now it's shifting into a new type of gear when we're leaving the house. And some analysts have actually suggested that the face mask could overtake the trainer as the best-selling accessory for mass market fashion. So mask wearing is not just about doing the right thing, but it's about being seen to be doing the right thing. And the mask has become quite a powerful way of signalling to others that you are a responsible citizen. So the sixth key trend around health that we wanted to talk to you about today was physical contact. Here we see trends and counter trends around fear of missing out and fear of going out. So physical distancing measures means people are missing out on life stage rituals. Year 11 are missing the rituals of exams and the last day of school. Annual festival trips have been postponed, hopefully only until next year. Big family holidays are being missed. University graduations are being missed. You know, there's a lot of moments of celebration that people aren't able to engage with at the moment. Going without physical contact with others is really tough. Although most of us can still see and speak to our loved ones through digital means, and now meeting in smaller groups, if we don't live with people, we're still struggling to be able to touch them at the moment. And touch is really fundamental for humans. The sort of more intimate touching, like an arm around the shoulder or a pat on the arm, the type of things that are reserved for closer friendships and family members, they make us feel happier, they make us feel more trusting of others, and we're having to go without these at the moment. Brits can't wait to see their friends and family. 42% of Brits have said their top priority is to see friends and family after lockdown. And while people across all age groups are pretty much equally excited to see friends and family, there is a noticeable difference between genders. So half of women will cite seeing friends and family as their top answer, compared with a third of men. Men, in contrast, are slightly more likely to say they look forward to going to the pub or out in general. But despite wanting a pint, nearly 2 in 3 people claim to be uncomfortable about going to bars and restaurants. Young people are most at ease with going to bars and restaurants, and we're seeing about a third of 18 to 34-year-olds saying they feel comfortable, compared with only 22% of 55 to 75s. So similarly, young people are also most willing to head to large public gatherings. And we're seeing that 1 in 5 kids are afraid to go outside. And I think this is something we really need to be thinking about going forward, is the long-term implications on health and well-being of a time which is really of a collective trauma. So this is something that we should be thinking about going forward, that it isn't just going to change when lockdown is released, but there will be impacts going forward. And I think with the schools starting to reopen in June, this is an interesting and important trend to reflect on, because it's not just the well-being of our children, it's the well-being of the parents and caregivers that will be impacted by this feeling. So we've taken you through 6 key trends that we've identified around health and the counter trends that are rising around this. And it really goes to highlight that there is not a singular experience of the lockdown and the pandemic. Therefore, you must make sure you understand how different audiences are being impacted and the support that they will need from brands. In particular, make sure you consider demographics beyond age and gender, and that you're looking at ethnicity, LGBTQ plus audiences, regionality across the UK, religion, disability, and mental health, because there are differences across these groups, and it's important to recognise how these differences will be playing out in the medium and longer term. There are 5 implications and opportunities that we wanted to share with you to get you started. So food as a ritual. Food has always served an important ritual for people. The post-gym smoothie, the pub lunch, the lunch break walk. But those rituals have had to change. So how can you create new or reframe those existing rituals? Celebrate small returns to normal. So the queues outside reopening drive-throughs show people's keenness to re-establish some element of normality. What other small returns can you help to celebrate? Harness the new fitness routines. So people are experimenting with new fitness routines. How can you help people to harness these or insert your brand into these new routines? Support your customers' mental health. This is a very difficult time for people. What can you do to provide authentic support to your customers? And expressive protective wear. There is an emerging interest in fashion and protective wear. So is there a role for brands to help people express their style safely? And what could that role be for your brand? So thank you for listening. We would love to help you with any questions that you have around this. Do please get in contact with us. So I say it's Claire McAlpine and Pauline Robson, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.